Hey, Trojan family, what is up? Welcome to USC LAFB Live, noon Pacific time, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thrilled to be here. Thank you, everyone, as always, for making this show, this network, this channel a part of your day. We are part of the LAFB network. And this is your daily dose of USC Trojans news. We have a lot to get into today. I've always wanted to have this, like the stack of papers, those live shows. A lot to get into today. For those of you that joined us on the call-in show last night, myself and Tim Prangley, thank you very much. Always good to see you. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m., call-in show again, twice weekly. You'll see the Madman and Tim. I'll be back Thursday at noon, and we'll have a preview show up on Friday. So it's Notre Dame week. USC absolutely proved themselves against Michigan in a some are saying statement game, some are saying impressive win. We'll kind of dive into that and where we divulge that. But I mean, nonetheless, fantastic win for this program, a absolutely necessary win for this program, and sets them up now to do something special potentially in South Bend this week. So we're going to talk about a new king. King Miller has risen like a phoenix from the ashes atop the throne in the media capital of the world of Los Angeles, where stars are born. We watched a star born right before our eyes at the beautiful Cali last Saturday. We'll talk about that. More commitments coming, maybe. USC garnered a commitment last night. Are more on the way. 33 already in the class, potentially more. We'll see. Was this a program identity shift? Like, did this win prove this identity of this program is shifting? The AP poll, we've discussed it a lot. Does it even matter? Should we even worry about it? We'll discuss. College game day. Decided against coming to two ranked opponents in South Bend, one of the greatest rivalries in all of sports, and instead elected to choose Alabama Ole Miss, a great matchup. So not saying that, but let's talk about that later. Injury updates, little bit of knowledge that I have. I will be at practice tonight. Well, we talk to Coach Riley, and I'll be at practice tomorrow. We'll talk to Coach Lynn. We'll see if we get any updates there. And finally, we go to your viewer comments. Like I said, it's going to be every Tuesday. We're going to do that and look at your viewer comments. So, so we'll get right into it. Fight on. Daisy Wedo. Austin Grigsby, all you guys getting in here. Appreciate you. I love doing the show midday, man. It's fun. A beautiful, beautiful rainy day in SoCal. It rains so little here that I love the rain. People say they love the rain. You usually live somewhere it doesn't rain very often. Like, I don't know if people in Seattle love the rain. Maybe they don't hate it. That's why they live there. They probably don't love it. I love it because it rains here like 10 days a year. So that when we get that, it's a nice break. I had my window and door open all morning with my cup of coffee, wearing the flannel. So can't complain. All right, King Miller. I mean, what an absolute performance from King Miller. You lose Wayman Jordan. Well, first you lose Eli Sanders, RB2. Let me turn these notifications off. Otherwise, I just get blown up all show. And you can probably hear pinging, so my apologies. So Eli Sanders, basically one snap, little out pass, little dump off pass, comes up a little gimpy on the sidelines, didn't look serious, but did not return in the game. And now we're hearing it's season ending injury. Heart breaks for that kid. He's a redshirt senior, past the point of, medical redshirting of that. So I believe, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure he's past that point. So, your heart breaks for the kid that likely will see the end of his collegiate season. So that happens. Wayman Jordan goes down kind of just before the half. And he's now, we'll talk more in the injury segment, but he's now likely out 4 to 6 weeks. So then you really have the only running back dressed. I believe there was one other walk-on dress, but King Miller, who we've seen this season sparingly, was the only other running back dressed. And he comes in and absolutely dominates. He ends up, for his performance, 18 rushes, 150 plus yards, touchdowns. He's named the Big Ten Freshman of the Week. He is a redshirt freshman. The Burlsworth Trophy Walk-On of the Week. The Paul Hornig National Player of the Week. And the accolades keep stacking. And I assume very soon no longer a walk-on and will be a scholarship athlete for the USC Trojans and probably start receiving some NIL money. Especially with a name like King Miller. I mean, advertisements speak for themselves. If you're an ad company, this guy keeps this up, that's the kid you're going to, just with that name alone. But the way he runs it, he's not a big dude, right? But he's really, Coach Riley talked about him yesterday on Trojan Live and just talked about his commitment, his dedication, showed up after, being a priority walk-on in 24 last year and was a little bit out of shape and then just really dedicated himself to the program, dedicated to putting in the work. And since last season, Coach Riley said he's been popping off in practice. So while we are all surprised by this new star that's been born before our eyes, the team really isn't, because they've been seeing it in practice week in and week out, and the maturation that he's had since being a freshman last year, obviously a redshirt freshman this year. And we're just seeing that work ethic and that vision. You can see the vision because, again, the body size is not huge. He's got good speed from what I've seen. He's got really good speed, but he's not as fast as like Eli Sanders with that true breakaway, but certainly fast enough. But the vision between the tackles and the way he's able to crease some of these runs. You see they're running a lot of counter right now, which I love seeing. Lincoln Riley and USC run a lot of counter and pulling a lot of guards. But the way his vision is zigzagging between the tackles and able to hit those crevices, those tiny creases, I think is it's just been special to watch. And he runs like Wayman Jordan with similar size to Eli Sanders. So I'm excited to see this next challenge. Sometimes when teams don't have a lot of tape, that's when kind of guys go off just because they're not really expecting it. So Notre Dame now will have plenty of tape on King Miller. He's had some big runs before Michigan, and then obviously was the focal point of the offense against Michigan. So now we'll see how he's able to perform against a staunch Notre Dame defense that has been pretty dominant against the run. I'll get more into it kind of on Thursday's show once we're really doing a Notre Dame preview. But, last week, again, not the greatest competition in NC State, but I think it was something like 2 point something yards per carry. I think Boise State, they held under 2 yards per carry. I think their best, I think Texas A&M averaged like 4 yards per carry. So, definitely a really good run defense. So we'll see what this offensive line could potentially do. And then now that King Miller is pretty much the featured back, what that will look like going up against. Now, all indications are Bryan Jackson now, who came in and everyone's heard about, I need to dive into it, but, came in from street clothes and USC ended up getting fined for that, but did have 5 carries, had the touchdown. He has been battling turf show. All indications is, he'll be good to go, or the kind of out of necessity, he will be good to go. And so you have what's kind of ironic about this is you go from the thunder and lightning of Wayman Jordan, Eli Sanders, to now the thunder and lightning of Bryan Jackson and King Miller. Bryan Jackson is that big booming back who I think has more elusive speed than people give him credit for. We just haven't seen a ton of it. He's always been kind of known as the goal line back. He was a true freshman last year and a sophomore this year. So I think hopefully we can now see that. We're going to have to see it more for the rest of the season with how long the starting backs are out. And so we'll get to see him more as a 3-down back and how he can spell King Miller. Because as good as King Miller is, and as excited I am to see him, like his body size, you don't want to have 18 carries every game, especially against teams like Notre Dame and Nebraska the following week after the bye. Not saying he can't do it, but hey, if you can have 14, 15 carries for King and 12 to 13 carries for Jackson, that's going to bode a lot better long-term, where we've seen these guys now getting injured. So I'm really excited to see what this kind of new thunder and lightning can look like with B-Jax and King Miller. So hats off to King. Let's move down to talk to some commitments. If any of you guys have comments on King, drop them in here. I can go back to those. As always, let me wet the whistle here real quick. Nothing like a nice cup of coffee in the rain, right? Am I right? All right. So last night, USC earned a commitment. I did a quick little recruiting update. You can find it right here on the USC LAFB channel. So I'm not going to dive fully into it. Talked about just what a monumental game this was just for the recruiting side of it. So you can find that, right here on USC LAFB. Quick little 15-minute video. So check that out. But they gained the commitment of Jaquan Morris, who is a top cornerback in JUCO right now. He will be a member of the 26th class, bringing it to 33 total commitments. Been saying all along, they're looking to get to that 35 number, 35 commitments for this class. So now, as of now, have 2 open spots. Yesterday morning, Steve Wiltfong of On3 Rivals put in a, whatever you want to call it, expert prediction, crystal ball, for Drayden Crowder to flip his commitment from Cal, where he is currently committed, to USC. Crowder's a 3-star prospect at Sierra Canyon. No, is it Sierra Canyon or Santa Margarita? I think it's Santa Margarita, actually. I think I wrote that wrong in my notes. But having a really good season so far and can certainly play above that 3-star ranking. Now, his crystal ball came before Jaquan Morris committed. So I'm not sure if that's now going to be the indication. I'm putting some words out there to see if I can find what this is looking like. And if, I think there may be another commitment coming from this weekend, whether that's in this 26 class or in the 27 class, chatter around is like, it was just a great weekend for recruiting. So I do think something will be coming out of it. I don't know if it's Crowder just because they got the cornerback commit in Morris. So I'm not sure if they do want another one. Now, when RJ Sermon's reclassified, that did open up another kind of corner spot, and we don't know exactly what number they want to settle on. Obviously, as we've seen from this year, having more cornerback depth is better. Seeing how the injuries have kind of really stacked up and guys are finally getting healthy now on the back end. But, going into Illinois or whatever, it was from a very deep young room to a not very deep room, and forcing young guys to really, have really big roles in these games. So, I don't think you can have too many, especially in a class that's 35 guys deep already. Right now, what I got here, I always mess up the number. We got, 1, 2, again, whether you say corner or defensive back, which I kind of lump them together. 3, 4, 5, Madden Riordan, who's some say an athlete, but he's going to be a secondary player. So with Jaquan Morris, you got 6 DBs essentially in this class. So if you add Crowder, that brings that number to 7. Now, again, that's defensive backs. So, whether they view that as 4 CBs, 3 safeties, then the number doesn't seem so crazy. So there is a chance based on what Wiltfong heard, but I'm just curious if that was prior to Morris. I mean, it was, his prediction came out prior to Morris committing, but I wonder if that would have any effect, if those were 2 separate potential events, or if one would affect the other. And USC was saying, hey, these are 2 guys we want to get a commitment from, whoever we get it from first. That's kind of how it goes. So I'll keep you updated on that. That's the latest on that. Like I said, I do think there will be others, at least one other coming out of the weekend. I just think it was a really strong weekend. Obviously, when you see the atmosphere at the Coliseum, the way the USC Trojans won, just the recruiting experience for all these guys, they went great. And I've talked to people said it was a fantastic weekend, as they all have been on these recruiting visits. So hats off to Chad Bowden and his staff for really knocking out of the park with these visitors coming to these games. All right, let's talk about the program's identity now, because this was a game that, I don't want to go as far to say a defining win, but it's up there. And you could make the argument that this was the best win of the Lincoln Riley era. I think you can look at that 2022 first season at home against Notre Dame, Caleb Williams Heisman campaign. That was a great win. Certainly last year, the or not the home opener, but the opener against LSU, that was certainly a great win. 2022 at the Rose Bowl, that 45-42 win over UCLA, like that was a great win. So I think there was you could look at a couple others that were really solid wins, but I think the way that they won this game makes this the most impressive win and probably the most important win of the Lincoln Riley era. Because this was a must-win game, right? Like Lincoln wasn't going anywhere. If they lost this game, he wasn't getting fired or anything like that. It's not at the point of, what Penn State was doing. But it would have essentially all the questions we had probably would not have gotten answered. Depending how they lost, obviously. But the way this game went and the way they won pretty much answered every single question we had. Now we got to see that continue throughout the rest of the season so those questions don't pop up again. But, we questioned the development of the secondary. They looked improved. We know the Michigan passing game is young with Bryce Underwood, so the competition wasn't quite as high, but they improved for sure. We questioned the true toughness, and I'm not saying me necessarily, but these were the questions, the true toughness of the trenches on both sides of the ball. Could the defensive line hold their own against real solid Big Ten offensive line play? How are the linebackers going to look, and are they going to be gap sound against a run-first team? How is the offensive line going to look with injuries stacking up against really dominant defensive lines? All of those questions we got answers for, and the answers were all positive. Offensive line looked dominant. Now, also credit Lincoln Riley in play calling. I mean, he was dialed in on not letting his quarterback take any unnecessary hits and getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And the screen game was on point. Credit the discipline of the offensive line, not going, think about the John Ray Reed penalty against Illinois being a yard past where he's supposed to be. Like that's, in screen games, that's hard for an offensive lineman to kind of hold their will before running downfield. So credit the play calling with the offensive line, with how much shifting they've had to do with these injuries, has looked fantastic this year. And Zach Hansen looks like the best offensive line coach in football. And I was extremely bullish on him when they made that move. I just didn't know if it would happen this quick. The defensive line looked how we thought they would look preseason. They looked extremely good overall. Devin Tompkins, I think he's the most underrated defensive lineman in the Big Ten. He's a name that still does not pop up at all nationally or just within the conference that I've seen. I don't watch a ton of other shows. But I haven't seen his name pop up. You see the Jakeem Stewart because of just him being a true freshman, and rightfully so. You see a lot of the Keyshawn Silver and the Jaw Jarrett just because they transferred. I don't think you see a lot of Devin Tompkins. You don't see a lot of Jade Abasiri. And those are the two guys balling up front. Those are the two guys holding it down up front. And it's not lost upon me, or it's not ironic that those are the two guys with the highest PFF grades this week and the highest snap counts. Well, Devin Tompkins being highest snap counts. Jade Abasiri was the highest graded defensive player on USC. Devin Tompkins is too. Those two guys deserve a lot more credit than they're getting, at least nationally. I think locally and among the USC fan base, like we all know how special those two guys are and how the driving force that they've been. And I don't mean this in any disrespect whatsoever, because this is a team that was built upon depth and rotation for this season. But the big consensus among really everyone was that, Keyshawn Silver and Jaw Jarrett would be the two dynamic additions from the offseason that would really run the show. And they've played well when asked. That's been their role, is kind of in this more rotational sense. But this is Abasiri and Tompkins' defensive line. And this is the identity that Coach Henne and Coach Nua have built on this front. It's kind of based on those two guys. And remember, Abasari he's a true sophomore. He's a true sophomore. So that's great to see. But you look at snap counts, Abasari, 28 total snaps, Devin Compkins, 41 total snaps. Then you got Jakeem Stewart with 22, Keyshawn Silver with 19, Floyd Picard, I'll talk about him later, only with 6 because he went out with injury, unfortunately. So we'll jump on that later. And Carlin Jones got in there with 5 snaps. He was one of my underrated sleepers heading into this season, a redshirt freshman from the state of Texas. So maybe we'll see his snap count start to grow a little bit. And that's it for the interior. And again, I'm just talking interior. Obviously, Anthony Lucas led the way on the outside. Cam Crawford, Braylon Shelby, they pretty much split reps almost as your kind of 3 big outside guys in terms of pass rush and containing the edge there. So it's a good defensive front. It looked like we expected it to look coming into the season. And what we saw it a lot in the early going. Obviously not against Illinois, but we saw the defensive front, I thought, looked very good early on in the season. The questions were more in the secondary, and the secondary looked improved. So, yeah, there's been an identity shift. And we said this. Did we say going into it? Was it on I think it was on the Victory Sunday show. Had USC won this game 42-41, I mean, even 31-28, a little bit of a shootout, just because of the style Michigan plays, you're probably not it's going to be tough to get to that 40s number just because of, the style of play running the ball is making it less possessions, right? But if they would have won that way, 1 possession game, it would have been a great win still. No doubt about that. But it would have still left those lingering questions. Like, can this team long-term play the brand of football that is required to win on the road, win in the trenches, and dominate in the Big Ten? We got to see it extend, but the way they played on Saturday, that is bully ball Big Ten football. And that translates to on the road. That style of play translates to South Bend, to Lincoln, Nebraska, to Eugene, Oregon. So we got to see it happen, but the identity is there now. That was not a soft football team on Saturday night, not even remotely. That was your blue collar, bring your lunch pail to work, knock you in the teeth type of football. And guess what? There was some glitz and glam in there too, as there should be. I said that on the preview show. If this team can play with glitz and glam and grit, watch out. Watch out. Because everyone knows they got glitz and glam. Jade Mayava, Makai Lemon, Jacoby Lane, now King Miller. They've got the set pieces for the show, for the Hollywood, for the highlight reel. Do they also have the grit? And they played with both on Saturday. We'll see what they look like in South Bend. And that's where it's really going to come out. So looking forward to that. Let's see here. What's up, Brian? Illinois ran a more similar offense to what Michigan ran last year. In my opinion, I don't think so. Michigan last year threw the ball 12 times. Remember, they had Orgy at quarterback. They ran every play. Maybe there was some running schematic styles similar. Trying to think back. But it was a very different type of game. I mean, Illinois ran the ball well. They did everything well on offense, right? USC couldn't stop them all. But Luke Altmaier had a fantastic game. I mean, he had a rushing touchdown, a throwing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown. The whole trifecta. So to me, it was a very different game because they were able to be effective with a really talented quarterback in Luke Altmaier, where Michigan last year essentially was playing wing T. Like, they didn't have a quarterback remotely. But the running games, I think were a little similar in how downhill they were able to run. And that's just what you can do when you're beating the defensive line off the ball, which USC obviously did not let happen in this game, which is why they were able to dominate the line of scrimmage. All right, let's move to the AP. So, we're a few days removed. Everyone knows AP is out. USC comes in at 20. Notre Dame sitting at 13. So a nice top 25 matchup here for just a great rivalry game. And I'm not going to get too much into this. I've talked about it before. But the frustrating thing about the AP poll, there's a lot of frustrating things about it, obviously. But what's frustrating is you have those that say it doesn't matter. But then in reality, it is the barometer for creating every narrative, every future ranking, and is what is specifically used for resumes, for legacy, so on and so forth. So sadly, it does matter a lot. Now, if this isn't even specific to USC, but if you're a team like USC, you just win out, you're fine. So I don't think it matters like that. I'm not saying it that way. They're not going to get screwed over if they just win out. They went out. They're in Big Ten championship. They're in the college football playoff. But it matters when we get down to these kind of nitty gritty and these conversations and these narratives. And here's an example for you. So right now, there are 10 SEC teams in the top 25. There are 5 Big Ten teams. Now, I'm not even going to go down the list of all those, and I don't got time to compare them all. I got more important things to do. But I think I haven't seen anything that tells me there should be 10 SEC teams in the top 25. Right? I don't know any logical person that really thinks that. Especially when you have some of these top tier teams, top tier SEC programs in the top 15, that their best win is against South Carolina. All of them equal, all of them have beaten South Carolina, and that's their best win. Maybe that tells you South Carolina is not that good. But by doing this now, by having 10 teams for the SEC in the top 25, I'm sure you guys have all seen it, or at least anyone on social media. Now you have everyone out there. Oh, wow, look at Oklahoma. They play a top 25 team the whole rest of their schedule. Look at Alabama. They got 4 top 25 matchups the rest of their schedule. And then you look at a Big Ten team and it's okay, they got 2 top 25 matchups. That's so skewed. It's a ranking created by people that don't watch all the games. We know that. That's a fact. There was an AP voter this week that had Michigan still at 17 and USC out of the top 25 after USC just dominated Michigan 31-13. And yet we use that ranking to prop up these narratives of, oh, this team now has 5 top 25 matchups down the stretch. Sadly, it matters. It has impact. Remember the graphic that was showed at this game? And I'm not even saying this is an untrue graphic by any means, but it was something to the tune. I don't remember the numbers, but it was Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma was, I'm making it up, was 10-3 against top 25 opponents, and since at USC is 4-11 or something. That's a narrative and a legacy based on a ranking system that is so skewed and so biased and doesn't make any sense. And people just throw in teams at their leisure to be in. It's quite, I don't want to say infuriating, but it's just, it doesn't make any sense because it literally does not make any sense. And people will criticize it, but then at the same breath, use it as a narrative. Look at how tough the SEC is. Man, every week you're playing a ranked opponent. Just look who's making the rankings. Is South Carolina a quality win? Apparently, if you're in the SEC, it is. I want to see South Carolina and Minnesota play. Minnesota's got no love. I bet Minnesota would beat South Carolina. A 5-1 Washington is not in the top 25. You don't think they can't take down 5 of those top 10 SEC teams? Big Ten goes 5-1 against the SEC in bowl games last year. And this isn't even Big Ten versus SEC. I know I'm making it that because obviously we're the USC show and USC's in the Big Ten. But it's just wild to me how everyone knows the rankings are so skewed and so biased. And yet the powers that be will then use those as their narratives, as their talking points. You know, and when it plays into whatever narrative you want, obviously you're going to do that. So enough about that. We'll move on. I just think it's silly and laughable, to be honest, because I know there should not be 10 SEC teams in the top 25. I'm sorry. Just shouldn't be. Just shouldn't be. And then they beat up on each other, and it's like, man, look how stacked this conference is. It just means more down here. It's just different. And I do actually love the SEC culture and the passion, the pageantry, the history. So I really don't have anything against the SEC. I think it's just how biased things are towards them. And this is all you USC fans know. This is coming from more the Pac-12 than the Big Ten. The Pac-12 always got crapped on by the other two conferences as not even being in the same class. I mean, how many years did we know? Like, if you had to go undefeated in the Pac-12, like not just in your conference for this season, to even get a sniff of the college football playoff. If you lost 2 games, forget about it. SEC so dominant, two losses, you can still get in because of how dominant it is. So I think it's more coming from that frustration that, when we were in the Pac-12, it was like so skewed. So anyway, this is online with that now. So College Game Day announced they will be attending the Ole Miss Alabama game instead of, I mean, I didn't say instead of, but I'm saying it, instead of USC Notre Dame in South Bend. Now, this is a great matchup, so I don't want to say that's not. And I think a lot of people will say they're, they own the rights to the SEC. They're going to prop up an SEC schools. It's a game on their network. To their credit, though, they've been at other games. I mean, they haven't just done SEC. They were in Indiana, Oregon just last week. I think they were at Penn State, Oregon also. So they've been at others. This week is, and maybe that led into it. They're like, oh man, we've done too many Big Ten games. And so they had to kind of go to an SEC. And again, it's a 5-6 matchup, which, as I'm just talking about the AP, now I'm talking about 5-6 matchup. But, that's what it is. Unfortunately, I don't agree with it, but it is a 5-6 matchup. Two historic programs. Wouldn't really call it necessarily a rivalry, but, it's still, it's a good matchup. And so in any normal year, I could understand it totally. Higher ranked opponents, same record. USC Notre Dame, while both in the top 25, are, lower ranked. So any normal year I would totally get. But the fact that this might be the last time Notre Dame and USC play. Remember, I mean, there's no game after this year under contract. USC's got an offer on the table for at least a 1-year extension where they can negotiate them long-term, which I think will eventually happen. I think they'll get something done for next year if they can't agree to long-term before that. But this is potentially the last meeting of one of the most historic rivalries in all of sports. And College Game Day decided to not be there for it. So this is not coming from an USC bias or a Notre Dame bias. This is coming from a college football bias. Like, why would you not attempt to be there if this is potentially, unless they know something we don't and a contract's been signed, so they're not worried about it. Unless there already is like an agreement between the two schools and two programs that just hasn't been yet announced, or there's a verbal agreement. But if that's not the case, and you're choosing just a one-off Ole Miss Alabama matchup versus the potential final meeting between two of the most historic programs ever in a rivalry that has spanned 94 years, that's just shocking to me. I know this game's on NBC, but game day is always at games that they don't necessarily air. They're at Notre Dame all the time. I think actually they were at Notre Dame. Were they at Notre Dame 2 years ago when I was there? They may have been. There was some show there 2 years ago. But that's just shocking to me. And that, I think that's the relevance of it. It's not that it's a matchup I'm not saying, well, I think it's better, obviously, but people can argue all that they want. It's the fact that it could be the last. The fact that it could be the final time these two iconic programs play, and they decide not to be there. So I don't agree with that, but it is what it is. All right. Injury updates. We're getting close to the end of the show here. Thank you, everyone that has hung out with me on a rainy Tuesday. Appreciate you guys always. I'm loving doing these midday shows. So this is fun. So let's keep this growing here. Keep this rolling real quick before we jump into the injury updates. Again, it won't be very depth. And then we got viewer comments to close the show. But let's talk about our friends over at Sleeper. If you watch the show, you've heard of them before. Number one sports app right now. Go to download it in the App Store or Google Play. And let me tell you, when you do, you're going to go make your first deposit because they got the daily fantasy. It's great for season-long fantasy. I think it's way better than ESPN, Yahoo. I'm not just saying that. I think it's just the interface, everything about it, the rankings I like better. But they got daily fantasy, which is basically a pick 'em. You choose 2 to 8 players across any sport and just choose more or less and win real money. So when you go to make your deposit, use that promo code USC LAFB, all one word, just the same as this channel, USC LAFB. You're going to get a match bonus up to $100. So if you put in $100, you get $100 free dollars to play with. You're sitting at $200 already. If you don't want to do that, just want to put in 10, you're going to match you $10. But wait, there's more, my friends. When you sign up today, you get a free $20 entry, no deposit needed. Look at that. So still deposit, use the promo code, but hey, sign up today and you get that free $20 entry no matter what. Tell them that LAFB sent you. All right. So, and yes, Brian, I was saying this last night. Forecast for South Bend is like high 50s and drizzly. USC gets nice practice. They get preparation for that. God shining down upon them saying, hey, we want you ready for Notre Dame. Here's some rain. Don't gotta simulate rain. Like, here's some real rain, some real weather. So USC gets some nice practice today, which I'll be at in my galoshes and an umbrella later today. Checking that out. Okay, so again, injury update, don't have a ton. We'll have more on Thursday for you as I'll be at practice this week. Elijah Page did not go against Michigan, obviously, as you guys know. Again, I thought he was really close. So to me, the reason he did not play was he was not 100%. And the fear was if after a series or two, whether he tweaked it at all or just didn't feel quite right, they didn't want to have to shift the entire offensive line mid-game. Would rather stick with the continuity across the 5 from the opening kick and stick with that all game long, which obviously it worked great. So it's good to know that this team, the depth they have on the offensive line, the versatility they have, and they can get it done against these, big, tough defensive lines. Now, I think Notre Dame is a slightly better one than Michigan. I think Michigan's still really good. I don't think anyone should write them off just because USC dominated. I think this is a good defensive front. But I do think Notre Dame is slightly better. So you obviously would love to have Elijah Page back in the lineup. So I feel like he was really close. We'll check on his status as of now on Tuesday. I can't say one way or the other. There is, again, the bye after this before Nebraska. So if he's not 100%, you hold him out, he'll be virtually 100% by Nebraska. So there's obviously that thought. But obviously, this isn't the NFL, right? You want to win these games. Every single game matters, especially in South Bend against Notre Dame. You want to get that done. So I think Page is trending up, but I don't want to give any definite on that. We'll find out more this week. Floyd Boucard obviously got rolled up on in that Michigan game. Tough loss, man. Underrated freshman who's just absolutely having a fantastic season. Was one of the biggest risers in fall camp and showed you why early on this season for what he's been able to do. I remember that Purdue game. Didn't he have wasn't it like 18 snaps and 6 pressures or something? Almost half the snaps he was pressuring the quarterback. So he's going to be such a special player. He did have to get assisted off the field, as all you guys probably saw, which never bodes well. But I don't want to speculate on how lengthy that injury is. We'll see if we get an update. But didn't look great, at least the way he left the field. So not just a depth piece. This is a guy that can come in and actually play really meaningful reps for this defensive front. So regardless, hope it's minimal. Obviously if he can be somehow good to go by Notre Dame, amazing. But even if he's good for, Nebraska or beyond, just hope he's back this season as quick as possible. So we'll let you guys know anything else I hear on that. Cause Floyd Boucard, man, special player. Under a 3-star. Dude was a 3-star. Crazy. So showing what when you get to SC with Coach Henne and Coach Nua, what can happen when you develop the right way. I already mentioned it. As you guys know, running back room just absolutely decimated. Eli Sanders out for the year. And Wayman Jordan is going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, kind of minimum, which is, obviously devastating. He's one of the best backs in not just the Big Ten, but in college football. Has proven his worth within the system, within his skill set. And it's just a really fun running back to watch. The shiftiness, the vision, the power, and the speed. I mean, he's the total package. He's a total 3-down back. And so, losing him for that long period, while the prospect of King Miller and B-Jax looks great, and I do think they'll play really well, you don't just replace a Wayman Jordan, right? So if he does miss that, let's just say 4, let's go super positive, misses Notre Dame, then you got the bye, he'd miss Nebraska, Northwestern, he could be back by Iowa and play those final 3 games, Iowa, at Oregon, and then at home against UCLA. If he's on those 6 weeks, he might be back by the final game of the season, UCLA. And then obviously, depending how the season goes, if UCLA or if USC is, playing in the conference game or playing in the playoff, then obviously he would hopefully be back for that. So, I mean, small chance he might be done for the year, which is really unfortunate. So hopefully it's in more that 4 to 5 week range and can get him back to finish the season. And obviously, depending how this year continues going for SC, then you have him available for that playoff push, which would be great. But Sanders, unfortunately, done for the year. So regardless, this is going to be the King Miller and B-Jax show. Carson Tabarachi, backup tight end, has some running back experience from high school. We saw him line up, I think, on just 1 snap, kind of at the running back position when, King Miller needed like a breather, being the only running back out there. So we might see him more. I doubt he'll ever run the football, which is always not a great thing when you're kind of using a guy more of just like, hey, we need another body out there. But that's kind of a tell to the defense. Like, oh, they're not going to run on this play because they got this, tight end lining up as a blocker. So, that's not great. We'll see this week if they do actually practice with him taking runs, because the last thing you want to do is tip your hand to the defense and just tell them this is a passing play. So that'll be the one thing to kind of note from tape is if they can kind of, play that chess match against Notre Dame, that if they have to utilize some different formations and different personnel packages, it's not tipping their hand on what the play call is. So those are pretty much all the updates. I mean, Jacoby Lane's, fully good to go. Obviously, he played the entire game. Alex Graham played 8 snaps. So finally getting to see him on the field was great to see. I'm sure we'll see his snap count just go up and up and up throughout the year. Just get him more up to speed. And so overall, relatively healthy outside of that running back room. And then we'll see how the offensive line continues to kind of shore up. All right, well, let's get to end this show with some viewer comments. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. If you have not already, please hit that like and subscribe button here on the USC LFB channel. That helps us out a ton. If you're watching on X, on my account or on LFB Network. Appreciate you for hanging out, watching. Would love it if you come over to YouTube, or at least when you're done with this, go hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Helps us out and helps us grow. And obviously then you get notified for, our 7 days a week of programming that we have. So I'll drop the link to this show is in the description there. So make sure to check that out as well. I will drop just really quickly some people last show. I'm not wearing one today. We got a bunch of merch, bunch of USC merch, Dodgers merch, Lakers merch, Rams if you're a Rams fan, Chargers if you're a Chargers fan, bunch of different merch. So go check it out. I just dropped it in the comments as well. That's our merch shop. And I think we got some good stuff in there for you to check out. And that helps us out too. So viewer comments. All right. These are always fun. I'm going to keep building this up. Eventually I'll drop some posts where you can just comment specifically below on anything that you would like to see read on here. So start with this one, long one, but I'll read it. Barry Fisher, you're the man. He is a member of the channel. You become a member, subscribe right here on the USC LAFB channel, or you can go to LAFBnetwork.com and become a member over there as well. That's another way to help us out and support. But he says, good show and Madman on point. This is referring to our Victory Sunday show. I too was thinking that Ramsey playing made a big, if quiet, difference. The whole back end was much better in their fits, coming up to make tackles and looking fairly coherent in their coverages. Michigan was a good team for them to play. Their QB, though talented, wasn't going to win this game through the air and allowed the front seven to really bring it and show they are a physical, tough front. Now they better stop patting themselves on the back and get themselves up to play the same physical game against Notre Dame. They're coming off a bye week, Notre Dame that is, and I'm sure they are itching to show these SoCal upstarts what toughness is. I think we can take them, but they need to be focused as much as they were on Saturday. Lemon is the best. He is amazing. He does everything at a high level, and he's a very good blocker and not afraid to tussle, and the kid is as tough as nails. And yes, Indiana is the real deal. They reminded me a little like Illinois, only much better. That doesn't mean the Quacks are bad. I think that will be the toughest game. Fight on. Fight on, Barry. Great comment. Yeah, I think, you hit the nail on the head on all this. And I said a lot of it earlier in the show that this game, the offensive style from Michigan kind of matched up nicely with what USC is best at on defense and gave them an opportunity to shore up other areas because they weren't going to get, assaulted through the air. Luke Altmaier did a great job when they played Illinois. CJ Carr, also a freshman. So while he is looking a little bit more polished so far than Bryce Underwood, he still is a true freshman as well. So very young. Obviously already has some big game experience for how Notre Dame started off the season. But this Trojans defense can certainly rattle him. And if that front seven can get after him, we should see some more success from the secondary as they continue to develop and get better as well. So, and then, yeah, Mekhi Levin, man. What a special player. What a special player Mekhi Levin is. All business too. Yeah, he's just a great kid. So I love the success we're seeing. And, he's just a special player. All right. Sack of Mojo Jr. With Franklin out, referring to James Franklin, Penn State might try to poach some of our coaching staff. Do we pick up a few PS players? I guess this means Penn State players in the portal to fill some holes. We're pretty banged up. Let's go fight on. Well, none of this will happen this year. So nothing you got to worry about. You can't, unless I'm missing something, you can't have any in-season transfers or anything like that. So, even if any Penn State players decide they're going to enter the portal, it will be after the season. They'll basically sit out the rest of this year and then hit the portal when the portal window is open. Same with coaches. There'll be no, there could be coaching conversations, I'm sure, but no coaching transitions right now. Penn State's got to finish the year how they are. So none of that to worry about. Now, just to coaches in general, I'm sure, first they got to get their head coach, right? You get your head coach first, and then he starts building out his staff. Based on all the reporting so far, and this is what I thought anyway, they're going to go after an established head coach who has a pedigree, who has built programs. I don't think they'll go after a first-time head coach. I know immediately there was the thought of D'Anton Lynn being a Penn State alumni, and obviously they wanted him for their defensive coordinator position last year and ended up getting Jim Knowles from Ohio State. So, but I don't think they're going to go after a first-time head coach. And as much as respect I have for D'Anton Lynn, and I think the fan base is now back on the D'Anton Lynn train, he's been a coordinator for 3 years, 2.5 years. So very little experience, and you're going to ask him to now take over a program like Penn State as a head coach. That's a lot to ask. Not saying he couldn't do it, but that's a lot to ask for a program that just paid $50 million essentially to fire their head coach who just was in the college football playoff last season. So they're going to go more, I think, the established head coach. I know Matt Rule's been a name linked. He's a Penn State alum. Obviously, Curt Cignetti's been a name linked. The interesting thing, and I won't talk too much about this since it's not really USC related, but the interesting thing is in today's college football world, like there's not as much, I don't know about draw, but there's not as much like necessity to kind of go to one of these premier historical programs. Say what you want about Penn State. They are a historical program. So 5 years ago, if you're at Indiana and you get the call from Penn State, yeah, you're going. That's an upgrade. That's a huge upgrade. In today's college football, I don't know if it is, outside of maybe monetary, if they can offer more money. But with NIL, with transfer portal, with free agency, essentially, I don't know if there is, like, outside of maybe a very small handful, USC being one of those, there's probably not many like jobs that you can't just build where you are. So unless Cignetti hates Bloomington or Matt Rule just wants to go to his alma mater, and I don't know exactly what those financial programs are like right now, but it's not like a huge upgrade anymore. I mean, there's no reason Curt Cignetti, he already has in 2 years. I mean, he could build a dynasty at Indiana. I don't know if he needs to go to Penn State. So the only way that he would want to go is more for his own resume to say, hey, look, I've built everywhere I've been. Took Indiana to the college football playoff last year. He's on pace to take him again this year. And then if he goes to Penn State and then he leads them to a natty, he can go down as like, wow, that is a program builder, which he already is. I don't think he needs to prove much more. But they'll go. I think that's what they'll do for head coach. And then, yes, surely we'll see if that head coach tries to poach any of the SC assistants. But I don't know. I don't think many would leave for that unless you're like the only way that they, in my opinion, will be able to poach is if they're going after like a position guy to be a coordinator. So if they would go after like Doug Belk or Coach Henderson to become the defensive coordinator, then that could surely happen. If they're going after like a Heward or Hansen to be the OC, then that. But they wouldn't be able to poach a position for position, in my opinion. USC can match them dollar for dollar, if not more. And this is going to sound cocky and disrespectful, but I don't know why, if you're here, why you would leave USC in Los Angeles for Happy Valley. Especially if USC finishes the season really strong. So, but yes, USC could definitely look at some Penn State players in the portal once the season's over. And certainly that recruiting class is, already they've had like 5 decommitments. I think the top running back in the 2027 class being one of them. USC will certainly look at a lot of those recruits as well. All right, let's see here. Next one. All right. Maguma, if I'm saying that right. The first real complete game, low penalty count, and great line play. LBs all showed up. Riley had 2 weeks to prepare, and it showed. Keep it going, fight on, and beat the Irish. 100%. I don't think I need to comment on this one too much. Thank you for the comment and appreciate you. 3 total penalties, 0 on defense. That's a huge difference from what we've seen this season. They cut out those 2 turnovers. This could have been a 41-13 or 41-7 game. So hats off to the staff, hats off to these players for preparing. Now let's see if they can stack it in 2 weeks in a row against two good opponents, which would be amazing to see. Jesse James, I do not like to disparage anyone, but is elite JUCO elite power 4? So this is obviously in reference to Jaquan Morris committing to USC. And yeah, this is, and I'm assuming this means, so you got to look at this recruiting, not transfer, right? Obviously JUCO is a collegiate player, but it is a commitment in terms of recruiting in that specific class, not a transfer portal player from, say, a power 4. So not sure if he meant in comparison to a power 4 transfer portal player or if he was looking at it from recruiting angle, but you got to look at it from recruiting because it is a recruiting commitment. And what I love about JUCO commits, I said this on the show yesterday, is here's guys that just love ball. Like they've been overlooked. They've been down and out. They're at these small JUCOs, usually in the middle of nowhere. Obviously no NIL money. So they are purely playing for the love of football and for the opportunity to maybe get noticed and make it to a D1 school. We've seen obviously the success of Wayman Jordan. We can look at others. DeCarlos Nicholson was a former JUCO product. So the mentality, I think, is great. The other side of that is when you look at the 26 class in general, not saying he's going to be better than these kids, so don't hear me that. But even the 5 stars, you're coming in as a high school kid. And so that's a big shift going from high school to then college. Going from JUCO to D1 is still a big shift. The competition obviously is very different, but you've played against college-sized bodies in some regards. Not all JUCO systems are made for D1 either, but there's some experience there that is different from playing high school ball. So the ceiling is still lower than, than like a Brandon Lockhart or an Albert Hill, who are these top tier corners, but the experience is already higher. And so you get a guy that can come in and hit the ground running and had had some meaningful reps already, even though it was at the JUCO level. So when looking at it, comparing it to other recruits, yes, you can absolutely say elite, because if he's the top cornerback, JUCO cornerback, then that's going to translate maybe even quicker than a top high school commit, just because the experience level. So great question or comment. And finally, Bob Springer, appreciate you. Always watches and comments on the show. Notre Dame looks like a similar team to Michigan with CJ Carr at quarterback. 100%. They want to do the exact similar thing. They want to dominate you in the trenches. They want to run the football with one of the best running backs in college football in Jeremiah Love. And they got depth at that position. And they've got a true freshman quarterback in CJ Carr, who has so far looked better than Bryce Underwood. So there's a slight upgrade there, but is still a true freshman. So the game plan is going to be very similar. Now, again, I'll get into more of the statistics and, passing defense versus passing offense and kind of how this team truly matches up later in the week. But the game plan should be very similar, at least defensively. Offensively, we'll see, and especially with the shift in running backs, you don't have the element of surprise now with King Miller. You're down your top 2 backs who you weren't down just last week. So they can game plan a lot better knowing that they're going to be facing King Miller and probably a restricted maybe Bryan Jackson. We'll see how much go he gets. So that changes a lot offensively. But defensively, the game plan is going to be very similar. Very similar. We'll see how they enact it. So, well, there you have it. Great show coming up right in an hour. 360 of you guys in here. Love this. Thank you so much for making this a part of your day. Thank you for all those that subscribe and comment and interact as we keep building this LAFB community. So I say it every week. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe right here on the USC LFB channel. If you haven't, go check out LAFBnetwork.com. I just built a message board on there. It's pretty much brand new. It's only me commenting right now. Go check out the message board. We'll drop intel in there. We'll have conversations in there, just like you have with all the other ones, the other great sites like, We Are SC and USC Football, but it's free. No subscription fee. So come and do it. You do have to create an account, but it's super easy, basic. It's just an email and your name, and you're in. So totally free. And we're just really trying to build that up and, continue building our community there. And we have all our other LA sports coverage at LAFBnetwork.com as well. As I mentioned, grab a shirt. You can grab, I think I have it linked right here on the YouTube channel, but you can also head to that link I dropped or just go to the shop button on LAFBnetwork.com. Thank you guys. As always, truly, truly appreciate you. This is a ton of fun. And again, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., Madman and Tim will be back on the call-in show. And I'll be back Thursday at noon with updates from practice, from Lincoln Riley, from Dantlin, from the players we talked to make sure to tune in to that. Thank you. And as always, fight on.